I cannot get over how swingy these earrings are. I will try not to let that distract me. Hello friends, foes, and those still under review. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the new horror books that are releasing in July. Or in this case, some that have already been released and some that have not been because I, as usual, am late. One of these days I will be on time with things. You mark my words, I am going to be on time for the August releases video. But I digress. It is July 16th at the time of filming, so half of these have already come out. The other half are going to be released over the next couple of weeks. Regardless, I will have them all linked down below as per usual so you can go and check them out and either order or pre-order them as the case may be. I need to wear my hair up more. I cannot get over how swingy these earrings are. I will try not to let that distract me. Anyways, we will start out with July 7th, and the first one on our list is Fabulous Bodies by Chuck Tingle. If your only exposure to Chuck Tingle has been his astronomical catalog of unhinged romance novels, this might come as a bit of a shock to you, but the man writes some of the best queer horror I have ever read in my life. I am telling you, this is going to be one of those. It is about a woman named Poppy who is an aspiring fashion influencer and mom by day and grave robber by night. One day she's sent to dig up the body of a recently deceased pop star. The last thing she expects is for the man to come back to life while she's, in the process of absconding with his remains. Like I said, I am a huge fan of his previous work in both categories, so I'm very excited for this one. This is probably going to be the first one that I pick off this list. Next is The Brides by Charlotte Cross, which also came out on July 7th. This seems to be a little bit of a feminist precursor, I guess, to Dracula, and is the story of his brides, which arguably is a better story than Dracula, in my opinion. Not to hate on the original novel, I absolutely love Dracula, but this seems like it is right up my alley. Just like the original novel, it's kind of like a mixed medium type thing, so it is written in the style of letters and diary entries and things like that. All in all, sounds pretty good. And the last book that released on July 7th that I have on my list is Brokeula by Michael J. Seidlinger. This one sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. It is about a broke vampire who decides to remake his wealth by starting an immortality multi-level marketing scheme. So he turns people who in turn turn more people into vampires, and so on and so forth. There's just something about a vampire pyramid scheme that sounds like a riot to me, so I am very excited to read this one. So the next big release date that I have on my list is July 14th, and there were 5 books on my list that released on that date. The first one is The Sea Hides Its Dead by Megan Bontrager? Apologies, Megan. So it is about a grad student named Caro who, along with her lover and professor, Edward Beck, go to study a cave that was the home of something called the Cult of Leviathan. The Cult of the Leviathan. So they go down into the system of sea caves that the cult was said to have made its home in, but the entrance of the cave collapses and so they're stuck there. And it sounds like it has some like Descent type vibes to it. And I love that movie. That's one of the few horror movies that has like legitimately freaked me out. I don't know if it's like the claustrophobia or the critters in there, but this book sounds like it has those kind of vibes to it. And next on the 14th was Homesick by Rhiannon Grist. The story follows a woman named Tasman who, after a very violent incident at her work, moves to a very remote cottage in the middle of nowhere to kind of start over. But the cottage that she's supposed to move into isn't as isolated as she'd like it to be. It turns out it's a duplex with a woman living on the other side of a very thin wall. And so while she's living there, she starts to experience some things that are not entirely normal, and she starts to worry that she might not be able to leave her past behind entirely. So I don't know, that one looks pretty good. I love a good creepy neighbor story. Next is The Intrigue by Silvia Moreno Garcia. That one also came out on the 14th. This is the same woman that wrote Mexican Gothic, which I have not read yet, but have heard very good reviews about it. It's about a con artist who is trying to make a real fortune because he's not getting any younger, and so he thinks he finds this in the form of Perla, who is a woman who owns a boarding house. Perla has a niece named Inez who sees through Ulysses immediately, but she is desperate to escape from her aunt's house, and so she teams up with Ulysses to try and pull one over on her aunt so she can get out of there as well. But it soon becomes very obvious that Perla is not nearly as easy a mark as either of them expected. Like I said, I have heard really good things about Moreno Garcia's work. I have not read any of it personally, but I've heard really good things, so this is going to find its way onto my TBR inevitably. Next up is Scary Movie Night by Miranda Smith. Follows a woman named Tippy who has recently broken off her engagement, and to cheer her up, her friends decide to have a scary movie night for her, where they can all dress up and have fun, but she starts getting some weird text messages from her ex-fiance, and so her ex-fiance is threatening to expose some of her secrets that she would rather, he took to the the grave. But this doesn't make a lot of sense to her since Oliver moved across the country right after they broke off the engagement. So while she's trying to figure out what's going on there, people start to disappear from this party, and so she is worried that one of her friends has something to do with it. So basically Tippy has to figure out which one of her friends is the culprit here. So this is going to go either on my Summerween or my Halloween TBR because it's got that slasher movie vibe that I really enjoy. But it's also not YA, so I am really excited about that. Last one that released on July 14th was Cross My Heart, I Hope You Die by Mallory Arnold, and it sounds a lot like John Tucker Must Die in book form. So it's got 3 women who discover they have been dating the same man, so they decide that they're going to team up and lure him to a secluded cabin in the woods where they are going to get some harmless revenge. They discover said cheating boyfriend dead in the cabin, which does not seem like that much of a loss to me, but I digress. So they end up stranded in a cabin in the woods with the corpse, and they have to figure out if one of them is the killer or if it's somebody else, and what do they do about it at that point. I loved John Tucker Must Die when I was in high school, so I don't know, the adult murder mystery version of this just sounds like a great time to me. Alright, next up is This Is Not an Exorcism by Ivy Feng, and that one comes out on July 20th. The book is about a woman named Laurel who calls herself an exorcist, but she's really just a fraud. She's never performed an actual exorcism, she just kind of fakes it, and her clients, you know, obviously don't have anything wrong with them, they just need that reassurance, I guess. So she uses the money that she earns from that to pay off her mother's medical bills. So she gets a call to the Poppy Creek bed and breakfast one day because the place is apparently haunted, and when she gets there she's confronted with the real thing. So she has to partner with a ghost to perform an actual exorcism because she can't fake her way out of this one. And if she cannot do that successfully, she's going to end up trapped there as a ghost as well. Next we have 7 different books that are releasing on July 21st. The first one is A Fate Worse Than Drowning by Sarah L. Hawthorne. It is about a woman named Elle who made a deal with the devil to save her sister, and so she has to live at a lighthouse and lure ships to their death so that the devil can have their souls. So the devil keeps demanding more and more shipwrecks, but one day a woman washes ashore after one of them, and her sister gets very attached to this woman, so she has to figure out if she is going to murder this woman and break her sister's heart, or if she's going to break the bargain that she made with the devil and suffer the consequences. Next is The Winter Folk by Jen Julian, which also releases on July 21st. It is about a woman named Moth who decides that she's going to go and become a housekeeper for a place called Deer Haven in the Appalachian Mountains. Deer Haven is a gathering place for a group of people called the Winter Folk. I don't actually know if they're people or not. At Deer Haven, you have to follow very, very strict rules, or you are going to face some fairly dire consequences. And so Moth is rejected from her post after her year-long contract and returns decades later with her teenage daughter and her husband. And so Moth can't shake the feeling that she needs to go back to Deer Haven, so while she's trying to hunt for a way in, she has to confront the memories of what happened to her while she was there. So it's kind of a bad summary that I've given you, but I can tell you that from the book blurb, it kind of gives the same vibe as You Weren't Meant to Be Human by Joseph Andrew White. I don't think it'll be the same like level of body horror from what I can tell, but it just gives me that same vibe, if that makes sense. Anyway, so that's that one. Next up on the 21st is We Send Them Down Singing by Libby Edwardson. It's about a girl named Skinny Caldwell whose mother was taken from her when she was little by a man called Zell Dorsey. So 13 years later, when Zell returns to town, she teams up with her school bus driver, Happy Walker, to try and figure out what exactly Zell did with her mother. I don't know. I don't have a lot of thoughts about that one other than it, I don't know, sounds kind of good. To be honest, all of these sound good, so you're probably gonna get sick of hearing me say that. I don't recommend turning it into a drinking game because it might kill you. Next is Carry Me to My Grave by Christopher Golden. Follows a man named Malcolm whose mother was known as a witch around town when he was little. He grew up with, you know, the neighborhood kids making up nursery rhymes and stuff about her. So Malcolm's mother, Maggie, is on her deathbed, and he and his sister Violet have to go and kind of, you know, hold vigil for her. Just before she dies, Maggie makes Malcolm promise that he will take her body back to where she grew up in Maine. So after she passes, they load her on a train and things immediately start to go wrong, and it seems like something very much does not want Maggie going back to Maine. I am really interested to read that particular one. There's just something about a haunting on a train that intrigues me, so I again, am excited to read that one. Next up is The Flayed Man by Chloe Lauder. It's about a woman named Ellis Karsten who is a triage nurse in the ER, and her mother is has fairly severe late onset dementia. So she works nights in the ER, and then during the day she has to take care of her mother, who is suffering from early onset dementia. But the real issue is not the dementia, it's the fact that her family are essentially vampires. It does not say vampires outright in the summary, but Alice's family must feed daily on blood or risk becoming mindless, skinless killing machines. Her uncle usually gets them blood to feed off of, but he disappears. So she has to team up with a paramedic to, find a new source. So while she's trying to find this new source of blood and her mother's dementia starts to worsen, her mom starts mentioning something called the Flayed Man, who is apparently an entity that is hunting them as a family. And this thing that is hunting them wants Alice to turn into the mindless, skinless killing machine that she will turn into if she doesn't find blood. She kind of has to decide what she's willing to sacrifice to retain her humanity, or if she is going to let her baser instincts take over. I don't know, Alice doesn't sound like a vampire entirely with the whole skinless thing, so I might have to read it just to figure out the lore there, because that's just fascinating to me. I don't know, I love a good vampire book, but I love the sound of whatever this is kind of more. Next up is Paint Me Like Your Dead Girls by Cynthia Murphy. It is about a crime journalist who discovers a painting at an estate sale. This painting was a part of a series of 4 that they think a serial killer may have painted. And so her art history professor dad buys the painting to complete this set of 4 because the other 3 are in the town's gallery. Soon after this painting is purchased and hung with the other 4, more murders start to happen. So Fliss needs to look at these paintings and see if they can tell her who the killer is before he, kills somebody else. Sounds a little bit more murder, mystery, thriller coded than it does horror, but it still sounds good. The last book I have on my list that's coming out on the 21st is Funerals Are for the Living by Sammy Ellis. And so it's about a girl named Junie Daniels who's in a car accident that claimed the life of her sister, and her mom's not really super with it, so Junie has to plan the funeral, and so she purchases the cheapest plot she can find, which is in the next town over in a place called Williamsville. And Williamsville was named for a slave master who was into some pretty dark occult shit. And so things start to happen at that cemetery, so Junie and her friend Omari start investigating, but they are soon taken by something. I read Dead Girls Walking by Sammy Ellis a couple of months ago, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm really excited to read this one too, just to see what else she's got going on. Alright, next up on July 28th, we have The Whisper by Chelsea Iverson. So it's about 4 girls living in a town called Whisper Ridge, and they're very close. They're very close to the forest around the town. It's a magical place for them, running around enjoying their lives until one of them is found dead in the woods. The friends kind of scatter, except for one of them, Joey, who remains in the town after her friend Quinn dies. And then a decade later, she hears the trees whisper. When the trees whisper, you listen, hence the whisper. She calls her friends back to town to figure out what exactly happened to their friend Quinn. It sounds a little bit like the last Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants book, but with more magic and more murder. So the last 4 on my list all release on July 28th. The first one is A Penance for Crows by Shannon Morgan. It's about a Scottish woman who has fled to an island in Ireland, untouched by 21st century advances. So it sounds a little Amish almost. This woman named Grisella flees there because she had a lot of bullying that was going on and stuff in Glasgow. And so 40 years later, Grisella, she's still kind of an outsider to the town. The townsfolk kind of tolerate her, and she kind of tolerates the townsfolk also. But one day while she's out on a walk, she stumbles across the body of a young priest with a diabolical symbol drawn on his chest. And shortly after that, she starts hearing whispers that no one else can hear. So the townsfolk start to distrust her even more than they did previously. There's kind of some mass hysteria in the wake of this, and so she's trying to protect for younger women that she's kind of taken under her wing. And I don't know, it sounds almost witch trial-y to me, and anything kind of in like the Celtic vein I'm really interested in. So that one's going pretty close to the top of my list when it comes out. Next up, also on the 28th, is We Were Never Here by Sophie Hannon, and it's about 2 girlfriends who are co-hosts of a ghost hunting YouTube channel. But this YouTube channel is really just a front for them to steal art, and so they do fairly well at this until one of their heists at a manor goes horribly wrong and Jules ends up dead. Georgia wakes up in a pool of blood and has absolutely no memory of what happened. So several months later, her and her team have to go back to finish the job and try to figure out what happened. I don't know, I love a good amnesia ghost hunting story. The art theft angle seems like a really fun angle to take that. That one sounds like it'll be a lot of fun. And last but not least, also releasing on the 28th is the Seance Garden by Juliet Blackwell. This is about a professor named Harper Gray, and she loses a bet with a friend. She ends up on this tour of haunted places around her town. So while she's on this tour, they are walking around the grounds of a mansion, and they find the body of a local artist. On that same night that the body of this artist is found, she sees something in the window of the mansion that she can't quite explain, and so that rocks her skepticism a little bit. So she starts poking around a little bit because she's a professor of the occult, even though she's a skeptic, and she figures out that the way that this artist was killed is very similar to the way that another woman was killed on the same grounds, but like 2 centuries ago. So she decides that she's going to rethink her skepticism a little bit and go and investigate what happened here, because she doesn't want the police to pin this on her friend, because she's absolutely certain that her friend is not the killer. So that is all the books on my list. They all sound really good to me, to be totally honest, so they're probably all going to end up on my TBR at some point. If I've missed any, make sure you comment down below and let me know. I always advocate for supporting your local library first, but in the event that you'd like to purchase or pre-order any of the books I've mentioned, they will all be linked down below. I try to always use either bookshop.org or booksellers.ca links. Both of those are organizations that support your local indie bookstores. So if you'd like to support the channel and also take a couple of bucks out of Daddy Bezos's pocket, I highly recommend checking out those 2 sites, even if you don't use my links. So if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more from me, subscribe, because there's plenty more where that came from. That's all I have for you right now, so stay safe, be good, enjoy your book, and I will catch you in the next one.